Okay, this is a reaction video. This is U.S. Culture Shock, American Time Zones. This is from Lawrence from Lost in the Pond. Please click like, share, and subscribe for him, as well as for me. I would appreciate it. Let's see what U.S. Culture... Now, America has 4 different time zones: Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific. At least the main United States. I know Alaska has its own, and Hawaii has its own as well.
That can't be real. The fact that America is a weird place will come as a surprise to absolutely nobody
No, it's really... Well, I don't think we're that weird. At least I don't think we are.
who watches the news. But believe it or not, it's sometimes weird in an adorable way. For instance, earlier I did something that I haven't done since 1998. I looked at my calendar, and in it, it reminded me that soon here in America we're going to be altering our clocks. This is something we don't do in Britain until weeks later. It's a very confusing time of year, and I need coffee. But
In fact, I think Britain actually this weekend pushes their clock forward and does their daylight savings time.
it isn't just daylight saving that's unusual. After all, as I just alluded to, that happens in Britain too. Time zones in the United States can be a bit of a culture shock.
Yeah, I think Arizona doesn't have to do daylight savings time, so that's the only country that doesn't, the only state in the U.S. that doesn't do it.
For somebody who
And to be fair, I don't even know why we do it. It's kind of silly.
grew up in Britain. Firstly, you should know I come from a country where there is just one time zone. If I were to drive from my hometown of Grimsby to, I don't know, the southwest coast of Wales, I will have driven through 2 countries, seen signposts in 2 different languages, and the time will be the same in my destination as it was in the place that I started. In other
Yeah, that's right. In England, there's only one time zone.
words, for the 26 years that I lived in Britain, I never had to think about time zones. I didn't even know time zones existed until I was about 9, and I only discovered that because I went on a 2-week holiday to Florida with my parents. I wasn't on my own. And so the mere concept of living in a country that has more than one time zone was alien to me at first. How did I combat this? I fought fire with fire. I became an alien myself. I moved to America, and when
Yeah, you became an alien. Yeah, I got it.
I was prepared that I would change time zones from my parents back in Britain. I understood I was moving to Eastern Standard Time. That's the time zone in central Indiana where I used to live. But then, my first job in the country was working in a call center where you are talking to Americans all across the country, and actually in some cases in the US territories as well. So it meant that I was having to deal with people that were on multiple different time zones to me. America has 6 time zones. If you don't include the territories,
Well, that's like I said. 4 time zones. If the United States: Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific. And if you count the Alaska and Hawaii, that makes 6.
if you do include the territories, it has 9. So to somebody from a small country, that itself is quite weird because it speaks to just how large America is. And it is. But that's not where it ends. Because over the years of doing this channel, I've learned a lot about America as a whole, not just the places I've lived in. And so I have learned that the time zones in this country are a little odd. The first example that I'm going to give you actually involves the 2 states that I've lived in, Indiana and Illinois. For context, Illinois, where I currently live,
That's right on the Eastern time zone and Central time zone border.
is entirely on Central Time. For those of you not in the know, that is 1 hour behind Eastern Standard Time and is 6 hours behind Greenwich Mean Time, which is what we're on in Britain. Most of Indiana is on Eastern Standard Time. However, there are 2 portions of Indiana that are on Central Time, just like Illinois, Southwest Indiana and Northwest Indiana. And it's Northwest Indiana that I am most familiar with because every holiday, my wife and I drive down from Chicago to Central Indiana to meet with her family. And once you enter Indiana, you don't just see the time alter by heading east, you also see it by heading south, which means that part
When my girlfriend and I went to Chicago back in 2001, I want to say it was. Yeah, we drove up through northern Indiana, and that's where we had the time zone change.
part of the Eastern Standard Time of Indiana is further west than part of the Central Time of Indiana. Why is this? Well, largely because there are other commuters that come out of Chicago to Northwest Indiana, and the ruling, I think, at a local level, I don't know who makes these decisions, said that that area for Chicago commuters will retain Chicago's time. Several years ago, I visited another state that begins with I, Idaho. They have a more
I think that Idaho's in Mountain.
extreme example of what I was just talking about. It's basically a north-south divide. The southern half of Idaho, where I visited Boise, was on Mountain Time Zone, and the northern Panhandle was on Pacific Time.
Yeah, that is kind of strange. I don't know why that is. Maybe that's because where the mountains go. That's probably what that is all about.
Even though Idaho is nowhere near the Pacific. For context, Mountain Time in southern Idaho and much of the Rocky Mountains is 1 hour behind.
That's probably what it is, the mountain range.
Central Time here, 2 hours behind Eastern Standard Time, and 7 hours behind Great Britain. So when I flew due north from Boise to Coeur d'Alene, we went back in time by going north. I wanted to call myself in the past to see if I was still at the airport in Boise. Also, if you're wondering why I'm pronouncing it Boise instead of Boise, that's how the locals told me to say it. So if they lied, take it up with them. And actually,
well, again, it's Boise. I don't know why it's Boise. Well, Boise. Who cares?
When I was in Idaho, I got curious about all of this and I started looking at the nearby surrounding states to see if there are any other quirks that I should know about, and that brought me straight to Oregon. This is a state that can say, hello, we are actually by the Pacific. Pacific time zone suits us. What are you doing, Idaho? To which Idaho could just turn around and say, what are you doing with our mountains? Because in the east of the state, for some inexplicable reason, Oregon is on mountain time. Are there mountains in that part of Oregon? I don't know. And you might think, well, it's Oregon, keep Portland weird. Well, Portland is on the other side of the state, for one, so they've got nothing to do with this. And second...
Yeah, that is kind of strange. I mean, when you look at time zones in the United States and how it's also... Because you'd expect it to be like a straight line, but it's not. It's like different parts, different states have it, and different parts of different... It's kind of strange.
I need to point out something that I don't know if you're aware of this. I don't know if anyone's talked about this, if this is one of those like pub quiz pieces or not. But because Oregon is partially on mountain time, and because Florida is partially on central time, Florida and Oregon are only one time zone apart. Oregon's facing the Pacific Ocean. Florida is facing the Atlantic Ocean.
Or the Gulf of America or the Gulf of Mexico, whichever one you want to look at it.
And occasionally the Gulf of whatever we're calling it these days. There's no way in my head that
yeah, I said it there, it comes out there.
People in the Florida Panhandle are calling relatives in eastern Oregon and only being an hour ahead. I'm not having that. There's some warped, messed up logic going on with both the US map and whoever it is who creates time zones. Who is that? The Interstate Commerce Commission.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that. I mean, if you look at Eastern, it goes zigzags up to the top near Michigan, Detroit, and then goes down into northern Indiana, then goes over to Illinois, and then goes, Kentucky, half of it's in Tennessee, another part, and but it's right on the Georgia, the Georgia Alabama border. Fascinating.
And then we get onto the topic of daylight saving time. Nobody wants to alter the clocks, even though digital technology largely does that for us, because it messes us up for, a day, and then we're used to it. Anyway, the point is, America is going to put its clocks forward on March the 9th. Britain, meanwhile, doesn't change things until March 30th. So for me, there's always a 3-week window.
Okay, so we're the ones who are putting it up. I thought it was England doing it, but I guess we're doing it. So okay, fair enough.
In which I completely forget about this disparity when
because the reason I know it is because I look at the football matches. The football matches. If it goes this weekend, then Arsenal, Manchester United goes an hour ahead. The Champions League goes an hour ahead, and so that makes it different. And it's either them doing it or us doing it. So I guess it's us doing it this year, this weekend.
Contacting people back in Britain. And this is a big problem when I'm calling Uncle Toby because he only gets one call a day. If I get the time wrong in my head and he was waiting for me, that's his entire call for the day gone. I know we don't have sympathy for him. But something to do with daylight saving that I've only realised since doing this channel is that I lied a moment ago. I said America puts its clocks forward. But to quote the Secretary of Defense from Independence Day, that's not entirely accurate. Because there are 2 states that decided we're not going to take part in daylight saving. That's for you idiots. And that's Arizona and Hawaii.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know about Hawaii, but I knew Arizona didn't do it. So Arizona just goes normal.
Hawaii will make the claim, we're close to the equator. Our sunlight situation is pretty consistent throughout the year, but in, like, not that accent. And that's fair enough. I'd probably do the same thing too if I was a collection of islands in the Pacific. But what is Arizona's excuse? It's a desert, right, that is also valid. But yes, the contiguous state of Arizona also doesn't observe daylight saving. That's not entirely accurate. Oh, really, Mr. Secretary? Why is that? Because of here. Oh yes, that place in northeastern Arizona that does observe daylight saving while the rest of the state points and laughs.
Yeah, my nephew lives in Phoenix or around that area, so he doesn't deal with daylight savings time.
So what's going on there? Well, I actually spoke to my patrons about this on my secret live stream. I'm just thinking this through in my head. This is what happens. I think through, how do you want to structure things? I think Arizona's its own section. For those of you who don't know, this area of Arizona is a Native American reservation known as the Navajo Nation, and they, unlike the rest of Arizona, observe daylight saving.
Okay, that I understand that.
Also notice that the Hopi Reservation, which is surrounded by the Navajo Nation, doesn't observe it, so commuting down here would make the Chicago to Indianapolis route feel like a mere introduction to time travel. And that's my 2 cents on why American time zones are weird, at least I thought they were, until I looked at a map of world time zones. It turns out that due to many countries' environments, and no doubt bureaucracy, the uneven-looking time zones are actually the norm, and that Britain, having only one time zone, is perhaps itself the weird one after all.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, look, it is what it is. I mean, time zones are unique. They are different. In fact, you don't even really, if you look at the map, it looks kind of crazy. But, you know, once your phone does it automatically for you, it is what it is.
Thank you to my patrons who make these videos possible. If you would like to become a patron...
Yeah, this is Lawrence, Lost in the Pond, U.S. Culture Shock, American Time Zones. Please click like, share, and subscribe for Lawrence, as well as for me, and have a good rest of your day. Thanks for watching.